It is getting cold on the Wilderstead, so forecast for the next 2 days, possibly snow. Hopefully not. It's a little bit too early for that for me, but for sure we're going to be getting below 0 temperatures at night. So what that means is we are going to have to cover any plants we want to keep in the ground, and we'll need to harvest everything that we won't be able to cover or will be severely damaged by freezing. So that includes our squash and our pumpkins, and we're gonna pull up the last of those potatoes that we have in the rows. We do have some tomatoes that are not in the greenhouse, in the hoop house, that we still wanna keep going. They're still pretty green, so we will cover those with a whole bunch tonight. Hopefully they will survive. These are the Roma tomatoes that we are still using for our canning purposes. This harvest will end our potato experiment. So we've grown our potatoes 3 different ways this year. We grew them just in pots. We grew them in rows, which we're gonna harvest today. And we also grew them in potato towers. So we've already harvested the pots and the potato towers. The pots we did really well. And in the towers we did not do so well because of most likely due to a frost that we had that happened at the end of June, which killed off a lot of the green foliage that had started to grow. So our last chance now is the rows.
So this is the state of the upper garden currently. Squash all along the front here and some pumpkins. Frost damaged. You can see where we've covered things where there's less frost damage. Some nice big red cabbages growing. We're going to let those go for a little while longer. The tomatoes, surprisingly, still alive. These did not get hit by frost, and they have not been covered up here in this garden. Potatoes are in here. Still somewhat green, but that's going to change after tonight. And there's a potato, chewed up, dug up by something. Let's hope that's not the only one.
Let's hope that is the only one.
Well, let's hope that's the only one that got chewed up, but let's hope that's not the only potato that we get from this row. And our volunteer wheat plants that popped up this year. I was talking to a friend who is involved in the grain industry, and I asked him if this would be enough to make a loaf of bread. And he said, well, Dave, if you take those and you plant them again next year, and then you plant them again the year after that, and continue doing that for about 5 years, you just might get enough for a loaf of bread. Seems like a lot of work just for a loaf of bread. We're just going to start at the back of the garden here. This whole row pretty much is all acorn squash. There's probably some pumpkins over at the far end there. That's what Caddis is most interested in. A double.
Yeah.
Sweet.
These squash that just have a little bit of damage, we can save them, but this one I think has seen better days, so we're not going to be saving this one. I'm going to toss what's left in with the chickens and see what they do with it. They seem to like the last squash that I tossed in there. Hello, chickens! Next we have pumpkins. So we have a couple of the bigger ones, but mainly we planted pie pumpkins. So these smaller guys. They're not completely orange yet, most of them, but it is time to pick them. I see some pies in our future. No animal damage on the pumpkins.
Nope. Whole bunch of pumpkins. Hopefully we can get these to ripen up just by putting them outside in the sunshine on the warm days. What do you think, Caddis? And we have a couple of butternut squash. Not many of these grew this year. We gave a couple away, which is too bad, but still have some butternut squash. Yummy. So this is the row of potatoes that we planted. We held it up a couple times. Aside from that, we didn't really do much with it at all. Mostly died back. Amanda's gonna get started digging in there and see what we come up with.
I see potatoes.
Couple better ones.
This one started growing. We should probably plant this inside the greenhouse so we can give it some chance for the other ones that we planted. So I'm gonna say overall it's just a bad year for potatoes. Our potted potatoes didn't do too bad.
But yeah, the ones in the pots didn't do too bad, but the towers and this row, I thought the towers just like completely failed for some reason this year, but this row, I mean, that's not much at all for a full row of potatoes. Let's weigh it up, see what we got. Then we'll know across the 3 methods how much we produced this year. One potato, 2 potato, 3 potato.
More.
So like 9 pounds out of that row.
Yeah, it's not pretty.
Nope, we got...
That's like 2 poutines.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. At least we had a decent harvest of squash and pumpkins. Caddis will be happy about that. We might have to figure out how to make poutine out of squash though. You think that'll work?
That might work.
I don't know.
I'm going to plant this one that's already growing. And put it in the greenhouse with the other pot of potatoes we just started. So here's the other potatoes that we planted. We put these in here just from some of the potatoes we got out of the buckets in the first place and put them right back in. And then put them in the greenhouse and they're growing pretty well. We'll see what we get out of this. Caddis, do you want to show them what's left? Yeah? So in the hoop house, we have some tomatoes still growing in here. We have some peppers and some more tomatoes. And so we're gonna close that up to keep them warm and keep the frost off them tonight. And outside we have kale. We have lots of kale. We have celery. We have some onions still to pick. And we have some beans that we let dry on the vine. Some of these we'll plant next year. Some of them we'll eat this winter. We have Swiss chard. We have red ones. We have yellow ones. I think chickens are gonna want some. The season is winding down, and if we get snow tomorrow, that's definitely going to seal the deal. Let's give these to chickens.